Right now, in a handful of American zip codes, moving trucks are pulling away from mansions worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. Not because the owners lost their fortunes, because they're taking those fortunes somewhere else. In 2025, a record 128,000 millionaires relocated internationally, the highest level of wealth migration ever recorded. But the far bigger story isn't happening between countries, it's happening between American cities. Inside the United States, high earners are quietly rearranging the entire map of national wealth, and the cities losing them are starting to feel it in ways that go far beyond a few empty estates. Between 2022 and 2023 alone, California lost a net 100,397 income tax filers to other states. New York lost nearly 72,000. Illinois lost more than 28,000. And it isn't the middle class doing most of the leaving. It's the top earners, the ones who fund an outsized share of every service, every school, every police department in the cities they leave behind. So where are they going? Why now? And what happens to a city once its wealthiest residents decide they've had enough? That's what this is about. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel breaks down where American money is actually moving, city by city, with real data instead of guesswork. If that's useful to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's get into why these millionaires are packing up. To understand what's happening inside the United States, you first have to understand what's happening around the world, because America is caught in the middle of it. Globally, wealth migration hit an all-time high in 2025. Analysts pointed to tax-driven relocation, lifestyle preferences, and global uncertainty as the main forces behind the surge. The United Kingdom lost the most, with roughly 16,500 high-net-worth individuals expected to leave in 2025 alone. Meanwhile, the United States pulled in an estimated 7,500 millionaires from abroad that same year, with hotspots like Florida, New York, and California still drawing business leaders and innovators despite carrying higher taxes than some of their global competitors. On paper, that makes America look like a winner. And at the international level, it is. But zoom into the country itself, and a completely different pattern appears. The same forces pushing millionaires out of London or Toronto are pushing them out of specific American cities too, just toward other American cities instead of other countries. This is the part most headlines miss. The United States isn't simply gaining or losing wealth. It's redistributing it internally at a scale large enough to reshape which states can fund their own governments. And the newest research suggests America's advantage might be narrower than it looks. In 2026, Henley Partners scored the U.S. at 62.3 out of 100 on their new wealth mobility framework, a measure that weighs citizenship-based taxation, fiscal complexity, and slow immigration processing against the country's raw wealth creation power. Translation: America still makes more millionaires than almost anywhere on Earth. It just isn't always great at keeping them where they started. No American city illustrates this shift more clearly than New York. New York City still holds the title of the wealthiest city on the planet, home to an estimated 384,500 high-net-worth individuals, including 818 resident centimillionaires and 66 billionaires. But the direction of travel matters more than the current total. A decade ago, New York held roughly 12% of the nation's millionaire households. Today, that share has fallen to just 8.7%. Even though the state technically has more millionaires in raw numbers than it did in 2013 because the whole country has more of them now, New York simply isn't keeping pace. The IRS data tells the sharper version of the story. Queens County alone lost more than 17,000 tax filers to interstate migration in a single year, the second largest county-level loss in the entire country. The Bronx lost over 16,000. And according to a Fox News review of the same federal data, the 10 counties with the largest net loss of taxpayers to other states in the most recent IRS release were all located in just 2 states, California and New York. Now add politics to economics. New York City's newly elected mayor, Zohran Mamdani, campaigned on raising the city's income tax on residents earning over $1 million from roughly 3.9% to 5.9%, alongside a corporate tax hike from 7.5% to 11.5%. Combined with the state's top bracket, that would push the total tax rate on New York's highest earners to almost 17%, the highest combined rate in the country. The reaction from the city's wealthiest was immediate. Hedge fund figures publicly warned of an exodus already underway. Governor Kathy Hochul, meanwhile, has pointedly asked the state's departed high earners to reconsider, telling frustrated wealthy New Yorkers to look toward the very state they're leaving for. As she put it, if they want to help, maybe they should start by going down to Palm Beach to see who they can convince to come back. Mamdani, for his part, insists the fear is overstated, pointing out that New York has more millionaires today than it did the last time the city raised taxes on top earners. Economists remain split. What isn't in dispute is the dollar figure already lost. One taxpayer advocacy analysis estimates New York's shrinking share of the national millionaire population has already cost the state nearly $12 billion in foregone revenue it would have collected had its share of millionaires simply stayed flat since 2013. If New York's story is loud, Illinois' is slow-moving and structural, which may be more dangerous. Illinois lost more than 28,000 net tax filers to interstate migration in a single recent year, with those departing taking roughly $6.2 billion in net income with them. Per departing resident, Illinois' loss is staggering. An estimated $110,618 in adjusted gross income leaves the state for every person who moves out, one of the highest per-person losses of any state in the country. The scale over time is enormous. Since 2012, Illinois has lost a net of nearly 60,000 taxpayers earning more than $200,000 a year, and the people leaving aren't earning the same as the people arriving. Those exiting the state report taxable income roughly $38,000 higher than those coming in. Chicago's specific position makes this worse. The city is grappling with the nation's second highest sales tax rate and its second highest commercial property tax burden, behind only Detroit. And by 2026, Illinois is projected to carry the single highest combined state and local tax burden in the country, an estimated $13,099 per household, 52% above the national average. On top of that, city leadership passed a 2026 budget built partly around more than $617 million in new taxes targeting the wealthiest residents and largest firms. Meanwhile, there's a real proposal on the table for a statewide surtax on residents earning over $1 million, which supporters argue could raise up to $5 billion a year in additional revenue by 2033. Critics counter that it risks accelerating the very departures the state can least afford. Public safety concerns compound the fiscal ones. While Chicago's overall crime numbers have actually been improving, 10 of 13 tracked offense categories fell in the first half of 2026 compared to the same period the year before, with robbery down 28% and carjacking down 27%. Perception often lags reality by years. And for high earners weighing where to plant roots, perception is often the deciding factor. The net result, more than 418,000 Illinois residents have left the state in recent years, citing high taxes and crime as their top reasons, with many resettling in Indiana, Florida, and Wisconsin. California presents the most complicated case of all because it's simultaneously the country's biggest wealth creator and one of its biggest wealth exporters. The numbers are blunt. California lost a net of more than 100,000 tax filers to interstate migration in the most recent IRS reporting year, more than any other state in the country, with an estimated $59,440 in adjusted gross income leaving per departing resident. Look back further, and the scale multiplies. Over roughly a decade, California lost a net of 1.6 million people to other states, an outflow estimated to have cost the state $12.7 billion in state and local revenue. Los Angeles adds its own local pressure on top of the statewide one. In 2022, city voters approved Measure ULA, nicknamed the Mansion Tax, which places a 4% transfer tax on property sales between $5 and $10 million, and a 5.5% tax on anything above that. It's raised over $1 billion for affordable housing, but researchers at UCLA found that since it took effect, the odds of a Los Angeles property selling above the tax threshold have fallen by as much as 50%. Then came January 2025. The Palisades fire tore through one of the city's wealthiest enclaves, destroying homes routinely valued well above the tax's $5 million threshold. Suddenly, residents who'd lost everything faced a steep transfer tax simply for selling the land underneath their former homes, prompting even the mayor to float suspending the policy for fire victims. And now, there's a bigger threat looming over the state's wealthiest residents entirely. A proposed 2026 ballot measure would impose a one-time 5% tax on the total wealth of California's billionaire residents, with revenue directed toward the state's health program for low-income residents. The measure hasn't even passed yet, and one prominent venture capitalist already estimates roughly $1 trillion in billionaire wealth has left California in anticipation of it. Added all together, a state income tax exceeding 13% at the top bracket, a local transfer tax on high-value property, a looming wealth tax proposal, and a housing crisis so severe that nearly 884,000 people cited high housing costs as their primary reason for leaving California between 2015 and 2025, and you get a state that keeps minting millionaires while simultaneously struggling to keep them. Here's the twist almost nobody expected. San Francisco, the epicenter of the so-called doom loop story just a few years ago, isn't losing millionaires. It's manufacturing them faster than almost any city on Earth. The Bay Area, encompassing San Francisco and Silicon Valley, now ranks as the second wealthiest metro area in the world, home to 342,400 resident millionaires, and it now holds more resident billionaires than New York City itself. Over the past decade, its millionaire population has grown by an extraordinary 98%, a pace matched by almost no other major city on the planet. The reason is one word: artificial intelligence. In 2026, a record $111.7 billion in venture capital poured into the Bay Area, and separate reporting found the region now captures 78% of all AI venture funding in the entire United States. Crime, one of the central pillars of the doom loop narrative, has reversed sharply too. One analysis found property crime down 31% and violent crime down 14%, alongside 96% of local business leaders reporting optimism about attracting new talent and companies. None of this means San Francisco's recovery is evenly felt. Local reporting is careful to note that the AI boom remains concentrated in a narrow sector. Housing affordability continues to worsen as rents climb, and homelessness remains a visible, unresolved problem despite the broader economic turnaround. This isn't a story where every resident benefits equally. It's a story where extreme wealth concentration and extreme housing pressure are rising together. But for the specific question this documentary is asking, where do millionaires go? San Francisco proves an important point. People don't leave high-tax, high-cost cities automatically. They leave when the value proposition breaks down. When a city can still offer the single most valuable thing money chases, extraordinary opportunity, high earners will tolerate almost anything else to stay near it. So if millionaires are leaving New York, Chicago, and parts of California, where exactly do they land? Overwhelmingly, the answer is Florida. And increasingly, it's not just Miami. Florida's billionaire population alone has climbed from just 6 residents to 119 in recent years, and the state is now adding roughly 1,350 new residents every single day. The financial industry has followed the money almost literally. Goldman Sachs expanded its asset management division to West Palm Beach with over 100 traders. Blackstone opened Miami operations. Carl Icahn relocated his company's headquarters to Sunny Isles Beach. Thoma Bravo and Millennium Management opened offices in Brickell. Palm Beach County has become the preferred landing spot for older, established wealth, while Miami-Dade pulls in younger founders and tech executives. Palm Beach County saw a 28% jump in family office-related property inquiries in a single recent month compared to the year before, and even smaller municipalities are competing aggressively for the business. Boca Raton's Business Development Office processed 12 family office relocation applications in one quarter, up from just 7 the year prior, offering expedited permitting and introductions to local law firms and banks in exchange. Miami's growth has been just as dramatic. Over the past decade, the city's millionaire population has grown by roughly 75%, while nearby West Palm Beach has grown by 90%, among the fastest rates of any wealth hub tracked anywhere in the world. But Florida isn't the only beneficiary. Texas gained the second highest number of relocating filers in the most recent IRS data, pulling in a net of 56,473 tax filers in a single year, with Austin specifically emerging as a magnet for tech wealth, a city that had grown to 9 resident billionaires as of recent counts. North Carolina has carved out its own lane too, with analysts noting that its gains look structurally different from Florida's, driven less by tax arbitrage and more by a genuinely diversified economy, with the research triangle pulling in technology, pharmaceutical, and finance employers that create demand for workers across every income bracket, not just the very top. What ties nearly all of these winning cities together is simple: no state income tax, comparatively lower costs, and, critically, enough economic gravity that the move doesn't feel like a step down. Money doesn't just flee high taxes, it flees toward genuine opportunity. The cities winning this migration are the ones offering both. It's tempting to treat this as a story about a handful of wealthy people making personal choices. It isn't. It's a fiscal story that touches everyone left behind. High earners fund a wildly disproportionate share of state and local government. When they leave, the states losing them don't just lose a household. They lose the equivalent of dozens of average taxpayers in a single departure. That's why the per-person income losses in states like Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts run into six figures, while the states gaining residents see far smaller per-person gains, but far more of them. This creates what analysts increasingly describe as a two-speed fiscal reality. States like Florida and Texas expand their tax base with each new high-earning arrival, while states like Illinois, California, and New York face a widening structural gap between what they need to fund public services and what their shrinking pool of top taxpayers can realistically support. One review found 27 states posted a net gain in interstate tax filers in the most recent data, while a handful of high-cost, high-tax states, California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, accounted for nearly all of the losses. The counter-argument matters too, and it deserves airtime. Economists studying past state-level tax increases on high earners, including a Cornell sociologist who's researched the topic extensively, argue the millionaire exodus narrative is frequently overstated, pointing out that most previous tax hikes on the wealthy in states like New Jersey and Oregon did not trigger the mass departures that critics predicted at the time. The honest picture, based on the evidence so far, is nuanced. Tax policy is a real factor in relocation decisions, but it's rarely the only one, and it's almost never as decisive on its own as either side of the political debate claims. Strip away the politics, and what's left is a country quietly redrawing its own internal map of wealth. New York remains the richest city on earth, but its grip is loosening. Chicago and Illinois are bleeding high earners at a pace the state's own economists call structurally dangerous. Los Angeles is caught between record-setting wealth creation and policies that make holding on to that wealth increasingly expensive. And San Francisco stands as the counterexample, proving that no city is destined to lose its wealthiest residents. Cities lose them when they stop offering something worth staying for. Meanwhile, Florida keeps adding both people and capital at a pace few states in American history have ever matched, with Texas, North Carolina, and a handful of Sunbelt cities building their own competing cases right behind it. This isn't a story with a clean ending because the map is still moving. New tax proposals in New York and California could accelerate the trend further. A housing shortage building in Sunbelt cities could eventually slow it down, and a single technological wave, as San Francisco just proved, can rewrite a city's entire trajectory almost overnight. What's certain is this: the millionaires leaving these cities aren't just changing their address. They're changing which American cities get to build their future and which ones are left figuring out how to fund theirs without them. That's the story of where American wealth is headed next, and why. Thanks for watching all the way through. If you found this useful, subscribe for more breakdowns like this one, and let me know in the comments which city you think is next to feel this shift. Until next time, take care of yourselves.